Alright, hey guys, what is going on? It is, of course, Isaiah once again, Intelligent Psycho here, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about some of my picks of the most disappointing films of 2026. Now, yes, this is the most disappointing. All of the other ones, my least favorite, and also the best movies of the year, or excuse me, my favorite movies of the year, that'll be coming pretty soon. In the up and coming days. I still got a lot of stuff to see. Like, I didn't get a chance to see the Mandalorian and Grogu. I didn't see the Bob Odenkirk movie Normal, or Beast, or Russell Crowe, and I forget the other actor's name, but I didn't get a chance to see those either. And there's several others that I get a chance to see, that has been out. But these are the ones that I have seen from the month of January, early February, all the way up until now. So I figured this is the right time to do this. So before we get to this, there's only going to be probably one more of an honorable but yet dishonorable mention. One that probably will be on a lot of people's lists and probably very high of the most disappointing films of the year, but just did not make it on here on this list. And that would be Wuthering Heights. Emerald Fennell. Now, I was not ever a fan of the actual material from it. This is more of a romantic comedy drama story that was based on the 18th century England, and with Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, who pretty much are played as Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw, as they're a wealthy family. Their wealthy family who end up tragically in a marriage because of what happened in both of their lives. They end up falling in love in England. So the only reason that this film did not make it on this year-end list because I didn't really have that much high expectations for this list. These are the films that I did have high expectations for, and they just completely let me down in every given way. So without a shadow of a doubt, let's get to the actual list, and we're gonna kick things off. Started at number 5 of my most disappointing films of the year, and that is How to Make a Killing. As I'm reading through my notes. So yeah, How to Make a Killing. This is directed by John Patton Ford, and of course this stars Glenn Powell as a blue collar rocket red feller. And it also has Margaret Qualley, Jessica Henwick, and Ed Harris. Pretty much a Rocket Redfellow. He's disowned at birth by an obscenely wealthy family. And so he pretty much is more like following this own path. And he really wants to reclaim his seat reclaim his inheritance, his family's inheritance, because a lot of people in his family are pretty much gone, and so he wants to reclaim his inheritance, and he won't stop to any given cost at the time, and he really is trying to reclaim his own family's his family's legacy by reclaiming that no matter how many family relatives that stand in his own way, he's gonna pretty much kill him at all costs. And at the time when I did this review earlier on in the year, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of that Eat the Rich Killer story. I felt like I saw this sort of angle in this sort of story before. Not necessarily in this kind of style as far as getting revenge by killing every other member of his family off. But the Eat the Rich Killer story was already done before in shows and Netflix shows. It's already done in earlier movies that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s. So with this kind of sort of story as an adaptation of the book based off of the same name, and also based on other films that came out in the early 2000s of the same premise, and Glenn Powell to me is not a lead. He's not really a lead actor. He's not really somebody who should be playing in a leading role. I feel like he really doesn't evolve and doesn't evoke quite of emotion. He doesn't have a whole lot of stake, and he doesn't really provoke a lot of decent commonalities that really makes you believe the character of Rocket Redfellow at all. Like, a lot of times he makes a lot of dumb decisions throughout the film that may me scratch my head, maybe question a lot of things in absence of reality, and maybe question a lot of authority. Was like, really? He's doing a lot of things, and he's trying to cover a lot of his tracks, and it was just like, you guys didn't know that he was making a lot of these decisions. You guys didn't understand, like, even his family, that going around and does the killing, like, you pretty much did not find any hints and clues that he was trying to off you guys off in a way. I was kind of just blown away and blown back of how the dumbness and the stupidity of the people around him, and even the ones that, were having conversations with him, and especially about business. One, Ed Harris, who ends up running a company that he was talking to, didn't pick up on any hints and clues that he pretty much was turning against you. And I just was not a huge fan of how they delivered and how he delivered Redfellow and Glen Powell's character. Really wasn't really blown away by how he did his performance. And I was really just blown away of the dumbness and the stupidity of certain people in the role, like how they wasn't really noticing a lot of the hints and clues that he was pretty much was doing a lot of shady things, doing a lot of dirtiness, a lot of wrongdoing, and making the people around him turn against him. So that was the main thing. The movie became very predictable. It became very absent and obscure in a way where it doesn't provoke emotion and interesting. And again, I've heard the same story and concept and premise before. It just left me with no regard. It felt like it was a long drag in every sense. So I was very let down by everything that was surrounded with me and involved with this movie. So I was not impressed. Absolutely not impressed by this movie at all. So yeah, How to Make a Killing is at number 5 of my most disappointing. Now, my number 4 most disappointing film of 2026 is Cry 101. Now, for those of you who don't know, the main part of this film is surrounded by Mike Davis, played by Chris Hemsworth. He is a professional jewel heist thief, and an LA detective, played by Mark Ruffalo, pursues an elusive thief who teams up with an insurance broker to do one last heist. Now, this movie is surrounded by 3 stories. Now, of course, one of the main people in the film, I guess, like I said, an elusive jewel thief, played by Chris Hemsworth as Mike Davis, and an insurance broker, played by Halle Berry. You also have Barry Cohegan. He's one of the thieves that was hired in by Money, played by Nick Nolte, who hires him on to complete a couple of assignments that he had Mike end up working on. But then once Mike realizes that those set of deals and those set of like things are broken back and broken by, what's not going in a direction in the way that he was going in. And again, like I said, the LA detective was pretty much finding out a lot of tracks and clues and ideas that hints that will lead him to make several mistakes. And then of course, it was, like I said, very predictable. It told 4 different stories into one. And like I said, once the LA detective found out that it was actually another elusive thief that was pretty much hired on, that was doing that job bidding, that robbed that big jewelry store down in Amsterdam, that pulled that big assignment mission off. He pretty much had his whole LA team and group of detectives going after Money and going after that other thief that was pretty much involved in the film. And again, I don't really like Halle Berry's role as an insurance broker. She barely was even in the film. She has other scenes and really wasn't working. Didn't really make me engrossively in her performance. She really didn't provoke anything to me. It just felt like just a typical standard role that she wanted to be in. And it just wasn't really convincing. And again, I would think somebody, as far as to play the character of this thief, Mike Davis, I don't think Chris Hemsworth was the right person to play it. I thought it should have been gone to somebody else, because I feel like I think he just pretty much was very miscast. I felt like somebody else could have been playing in this role, like for example, like like younger actor like Jonathan Bailey or Jake Gyllenhaal or somebody. I would have thought one of those would have probably played this role a lot better than what he did, because I don't think Chris Hemsworth was the right person to do it, and I feel like he very much so made it unbearable in his performance because he wasn't believable. He wasn't as convincing. He didn't provide anything that was very much so inviting. And I felt like the film, 2 hours and 20 minutes long, of a crime drama, of a crime thriller, it felt like it was a little bit over 3 hours long because of the pacing was very slow. It wasn't methodical at all. And again, like I said, the idea and the concept wasn't thought out at all. It told several different stories, and it just felt like very much of a jumble mess. And it pretty much, it was just throwing ideas, throwing theories, throwing much so of concepts at the wind and throwing stuff at the wall, and was hoping it could stick, and it didn't stick at all whatsoever. All right, coming in at number 3 of my most disappointing films of the year is The Bride. Now, for those of you who did not know, this is directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. This is her first time behind the director's chair, if I'm not mistaken, as far as directing a horror adaptation, which is a follow-up of the Frankenstein adaptation movies that came out in the 30s and in the early 1940s as well. Her and Jessie Buckley did both work together for the movie The Lost Daughter that came out in 2021, and that was a really good movie at that time. So they worked together before, but this is both of their times working together again. Like I said, for a horror adaptation of the same name. And again, if you don't know, this is taking place in the 1930s. Dr. Euphonius, a groundbreaking scientist, a young woman pretty much was murdered inside of a local bar, and she ends up wanting to find a love companion, Frank, played by Christian Bale, a monster what happens to be what is either one of them could ever imagine. Now, what was disappointing to me about this film was I hate the fact that it had so much ideas of Ida and Frank, and pretty much, Frank was feeling lonesome, he was feeling lonely, he needed some sort of love companion, so he went to Euphonius, he went to the scientist to recreate and resurrect Ida, for they could go on this little romantic, romantic getaway, like get away from society, get away from Chicago, the area, so they could be on this little like fantasization romantic getaway. And I'm sorry, that just did not work to me. And some of the musical notes, the musical elements in here was absolutely whacked out. It just was unnecessary, and I can see why people made so many comparisons to the Joker that came out a couple years ago. Everybody made comparisons to this because the musical notes, the themes, the overall, the visuals, the shots everything just felt very similar to a feeling of what DC did a couple years ago with the follow-up to Joker Folie à Deux. Like, it felt very much so like that, and not so in a good way. And that was the main thing. And of course, certain ideas of the message of the woman hear me roar aspect just really did not work either. And it felt like in the film it was so many voice interpolations of the bride, of Ida, talking to the other version of the Ida in the film and telling her, oh yeah, you got to do this, you got to make people feel your presence, you got to make people feel your space. And it just would just throw me off, because I'm like, okay, why is it going to flashbacks of an older version of Ida, of Mary Shelley's version, and instead we should be focusing more on Ida? And I felt like that didn't work with the film. It just really just made it more depressing. And again, you had these couple of cops. One cop played Peter Skarsgård and Penelope Cruz, both homicide detectives. One of the homicide detectives has a history and a track record with Ida, because they both go back a while, but it took a while for you to really get involved with the film to really know that they had a background, that they had a track record. of him, knowing Ida in the past, and it just really just had no sense of awareness, no sense of believability, and to me that was the disappointment of it, because from the trailers I was just really enthused, really impressed, just from the visuals, just from the scope of it. It really had me going, it had me hooked in, and this just did not have me hooked in. The Bride was very much so a disappointment because it was because of the main two lead performances were ruined because of a script that was very much so incomplete, story and concept that felt very incomplete, and also incompletion when it comes to other cast members that really didn't have their story didn't feel fulfilled and complete. And again, the action was okay, but I felt like things felt very sloppy, felt very very sloppy, very misguided, and it felt very all over the place. And so that was the main thing that was disappointing, was every aspect of it besides our main two leads, and besides the doctor in here, played by Annette Bening, the scientist. She was okay, but everything else about it was just very much so lackluster. All right, my number 2 film, the most disappointing, was I Love Boosters. Yes, now this is the latest one I just did a review on. And the main reason why, and I said it in there, was number 1, the absolute disastrous part was the casting, and very much little and very much so to do. And number 2, the absolute central arc of it was a group of shoplifters, and they're doing a bunch of robbing of different clothing and fashion lines, and selling a lot of these clothes that they were stealing and that they were getting out of these stores, and selling them pretty much on the market share in the marketplace. So it pretty much is trying to give a lot of messages and themes about survival and anti-capitalism, and how pretty much societal means and systemic corruption. And I get that, but to me, that the message and the theme was just so unwarranted and unnecessary, because the cast didn't really feel like it was really there. And like I said, it tried to be so much trippy with the visuals, very artistic as far as just the scope and the camera work and the shots. It just really just threw everything off for me. It threw a lot of just the overall film of it off, the aspect of the film off. It really threw everything off as far as just the experience from it. And again, like Lakeith Stanfield's performance was not warranted at all. He barely has much of enough screen time to really do much of anything. Demi Moore really didn't really do anything in here that really was anything creative or innovative or any interesting to me. And again, the ideas of socialism, anti-capitalism, and pretty much survival instincts, all of that stuff was pretty much done before in other films, and done way better and a lot better. So yeah, that would be my most disappointing, and that would be my second most disappointing part of the film, and really something that I really wouldn't recommend go seeing. But if you really like these kind of artistic style of films, and talking about brands in the fashion industry, directed by Boots Riley, if I didn't mention that already. And again, I did like Keke Palmer's performance, and I did like Naomi Ackie as Sade. I thought they were pretty good, but other than that, every other character in here was very useless, very pointless. Didn't add much of anything to the storyline. Didn't add much anything to the film and their performances whatsoever. It felt like they was very much misguided, and pretty much they didn't really add anything to really make it feel more believable. And the number 1 most disappointing film of the year is Disclosure Day. And again, I continue to reiterate, as far as you try to throw several things at the wall and make it, and hopefully it can stick, that's what this film did. That's what Disclosure Day did, and it was just very much so whack. First off, let me just say, Steven Spielberg is completely out of touch with a lot of what's going on in today's era of AI and technology, and he really did not add anything. This movie did not have any of the Spielberg like touch and magic and feel of what he did in his older films, from Jurassic Park and Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, his producing of Back to the Future, Jaws. Like, none of those films iterated anything in this one. And to me, again, it tries to be a sci-fi fantasy, but to me, it has so much stuff talking about when it comes to systemically about religion, and again, of course, talking about more socialistic outtakes. It also tries to make it more of a CSI, more of a CI, FBI detective movie. It tries to be so many different genres, subgenres, and themes, and again, it was ruined by just the concept of it. It just, you could have made it more of a Catholic movie surrounded by somebody that was like Eve Houston's character, who ends up becoming a nun. You could have made more of a religious trope instead of it trying to be more of these rogue FBI, these rogue agents, FBI agents going after a meteorologist and then going after a cybersecurity agent. Like, that was not even that shouldn't even really been the purpose. And like I said, it tried to tell this more dystopian, built-like atmosphere from the trippiness and the visuals, the lighting and the photography. It just, and the editing too was very choppy as well. It came from scene to scene to scene, and even the ones on this list, even The Bride had a problem with the editing and the chopping. If I didn't mention that already, but in here it was really choppy. The editing was choppy. Was very sloppy. The editing was very choppy. The pacing was very just lackadaisical and really sloppy also. So yeah, those are my most disappointing films of the year by far, without a shadow of a doubt. And anybody who is in the comment section, tell me what your guys' most disappointing films of the year are. Let me know down in the comment section below. I'm out. Peace.